MLS 2025 season is starting to officially take shape. FA Cup had a decent amount of magic, and the NASL finally has their day in court. That and much more here on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, working towards becoming the new home of the American soccer conversation, coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. I'm Robert Kerr, up from the lower leagues, happy to be joined by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Jason Davis. How you doing?
I'm good. It's Monday, and we're starting out strong because it's a big day of American soccer news. I like it when we talk a lot about American soccer. I know the FA Cup happened, and we'll touch on it, Robert. People are like, "Oh, England, little clubs playing big clubs, aye!" But I'm ready for some good old-fashioned American soccer talk.
Yep, teams were reporting this weekend. We'll talk about the folks that didn't show up. NASL finally has their day in court after nearly a decade of litigation and a whole lot more transfer talks. You like transfer talk?
I do. I like transfer talk. I'm a cynic. I'm a skeptic sometimes when it comes to transfer stuff because there's so much nonsense out there in the world. You know, it's like, oh, this club is interested in this player. You think because he's really good? Oh, really? Wow, what a shock! What a surprising story. But then again, you know, there are stories that come out that give us real, legitimate. Something to sink our teeth into, legitimate stories, possibilities of big moves. And I think I'm excited, especially the way that Major League Soccer is trending with some of the ambition that some of these clubs are showing.
Yeah, definitely a new era is upon us on the players being targeted, it would seem. Before we dig into it, let's get a shirt check here on you, Jason.
Yeah, grab this one off the rack today. This is an old school Phoenix Rising. I don't even know how old this shirt is. It is nothing except it's just red. And then it has just this, whatever you call this section, the upper chest with the Phoenix Rising badge, Macron. I don't know. It's just a red shirt with that. And I was like, oh, I haven't worn this in forever. Should rep Phoenix Rising. I mean, that's a club that's, I think, been pretty interesting in their history so far. Of course, they had Didier Drogba.
Yeah, I was going to say an American team that had Didier Drogba on it is just notable in its own right, no matter what.
Yeah, as a part owner of the club as well, Didier Drogba. In fact, I think their ownership group is one of the most interesting in American soccer. I'm looking at the list right now. Drogba, Brandon McCarthy, who is a baseball pitcher, Major League Baseball, Pete Wentz. Pete Wentz from Fallout Boy is an owner of Phoenix Rising. Did you know that, Rob? Were you aware?
I did not know that, but I know one of the foundational owners was Diplo, was it not?
Diplo, yes, still a part owner of Phoenix Rising. Diplo, yeah. Wow, incredible stuff, right? Look at that. Like musicians getting involved in American soccer at the lower league level.
Musicians want to be athletes, athletes want to be musicians, right?
Something like that. Isn't that it? Rock stars want to be actors and actors want to be rock stars.
Yeah, well, something like that. I mean, everyone's always looking, everyone thinks everyone's got someone to look up to, I think, is what it is.
I do think that there are plenty of musicians out there who would really like to be great athletes. That is, you're right about that. I think there's a chasing that dream kind of thing. I mean, how many times have we seen Drake do something sports related? He, at one point, years and years ago, and there these photos exist on the internet. Drake in full Toronto FC kit out there on the field at BMO, kicking a ball around, not doing it well, but kicking a ball around nonetheless.
Before we get into our headlines and the long balls, I'll remind you guys to hit the subscribe button. Morning Kickaround, 2 words, not 3, and we are creeping ever closer. We could hit 500 in the show, Jason. We are within a dozen of subscribers.
Do you know how we do this? This is how we get there. Everybody who's watching or everybody who watches later should post the link to the show or share the show page, the YouTube channel for Morning Kickaround with somebody you don't think knows about us yet, because that's what we need. Like,
we've just been word of mouth so far.
We've got some hardcores out there. I know lots of you have been watching us pretty much from the beginning. It's a couple months in. And but there are lots of people who don't know that Morning Kick Around is happening. I only have so much reach on social media these days. We're trying to push it, but we really do need that word of mouth help. We need you to post or share or talk about the show so that people will know that we're here every day or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
And clips and segments always available on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel. Follow us along at Kickaround on social media. We are currently on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And you can write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. All right, we got plenty to talk about. Let's hit the headlines. Let's kick Monday morning's long balls. Monday, January 13th, our headlines are long balls, and our first of the day, long ball number one, we got to talk MLS news. We're going to get into the lawsuit business later, but there's plenty of transfer and camp talk to go around. So Tom Bogert, he was our guest on Friday, and he teased that Atlanta might just break the MLS transfer record. And over the weekend, it came out that Atlanta is being connected to Middlesbrough striker Emmanuel Latte Laith. What do you think about that, Jason?
I mean, obviously, the numbers here, the numbers here that Tom's reporting, bid worth north of $18 million in the $20 million range with add-ons. That was his post about Atlanta United's bid. And then he followed up, as you can see on the screen here, with a list of the biggest transfers in MLS history. Now, Kevin Denke to FC Cincinnati just happened back in November. Denke has yet to play a game for Cincinnati. So that's a brand new record set, by $200,000 over Thiago Almada, who Atlanta United purchased, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever that was. He's obviously already out of the league. Ezequiel Barco, Atlanta, he's out of the league. They sold him for, I think, a profit. Pity Martinez, I know they sold Pity Martinez for a profit. And then Alexei Miranchuk. Look at this. After Cincinnati set the record with Denke, Atlanta, and now the story is they want to reclaim the record with this bid for Laith. And, you can't say Atlanta United is not ambitious. I mean, by MLS standards, this is PSG, this is Manchester City, this is Real Madrid. This is within our little world. It's nothing compared to what they spend on players, clearly, but within MLS, Atlanta United are the ones pushing the envelope, and I think it's fascinating. Now, it's almost one of those things, Rob, where it doesn't matter. Like, okay, if you're an Atlanta United fan, do you trust Garth Lagerwey and Henderson to figure this out? Right, Chris Henderson. Do you trust them to know what they're doing in terms of recruitment and signings? Yes or no?
Easy answer is yes. I would trust them because they have a track record. They have a proof of concept there already. They had some previous leadership that didn't have that proof of concept and proved to be spending in places where it didn't quite become as successful as their financial layout. And then Lagerwey, he's done his thing and has proven successful in previous stops. So add that plus Atlanta's resources that they're willing to put into it. It might be, the second coming of Atlanta United from that first generation of success there.
Right. You would feel like this is more Miguel Almiron than Pity Martinez or Ezequiel Barco, right? And there is a difference of character here in terms of Miranchuk, who was on that list, and obviously now with Laith. These are players who have done things in Europe or have come up through European ranks. Now, that's not to say they're better choices necessarily. We have to see them on the field in significant ways. Miranchuk has already played. We'll wait to see what happens with Laith. But considering Atlanta United's previous approach was to go and get Barco, right, out of an Argentine system. Pity Martinez, also Argentine. Miguel Almiron, Paraguayan, right? Or that pipeline from South America, I think, still is a thing Atlanta United will tap into in the future. But clearly, they are taking a look at different places to go shopping. And again, it's like, okay, how good is Laith? If you look at his numbers, if you compare, like if you think about what he's done as a player already, he's 26 years old, right? This is not a
Spring chick.
prospect.
He's not a spring chicken.
This is not a player who is who is 20 years old and has a lot of potential but hasn't proven anything, right? He's scored goals in his career at a number of places. Middlesbrough the last couple seasons, and Atlanta is saying we want to win now. We want to win now. And while spending $20 million used to be, or 16 or 15 or 14 used to be about, okay, we're going to buy this player, Peter Martinez, we're going to buy this player, Ezequiel Barco, we're going to buy this player, Miguel Almiron, Thiago Mata, and then in a couple of years' time, hopefully they help us win. But in a couple of years' time, we're going to make money off of them by selling them somewhere else. In most people's minds, that was supposed to be Europe. It clearly hasn't happened in every case. But we're going to sell these players and make money. And it's not impossible that they expect to make money on Lath or at least recoup their spend on Lath. But if he's 26 and he scored goals in the championship, and they're talking about a approach to win games now, this is a different approach, right? This is a different way for Atlanta United, and I think that's fascinating here.
Yeah, looking at his track record so far this season for Middlesbrough, he's got 10 goals, 2 assists, 28 games. Last year, he played a full season, scoring 18 and 36, and then he was in Switzerland previous to that, scoring 16 goals, 3 assists in 34 appearances. So he has a pretty consistent record of scoring goals where he's been. So to your point, a win now, not necessarily an investment type of player.
You could also argue that they kind of did this with Giakoumakis, right? The Giakoumakis is in this. They didn't spend this kind of money on Giakoumakis, but he was a player that they brought in who who wasn't a young player anymore, who had scored a bunch of goals in other places, and he was very good for them. Ultimately, he moved on. He went to Cruz Azul, and Atlanta United, I think, probably did okay financially on that situation. So I don't know. This is just interesting in terms of the way it paints a picture for Atlanta United and what they want to do. And again, the ambition is unrivaled in Major League Soccer.
Other bullet point notes from MLS over the weekend: Chicho Arango might be moving from San Jose from RSL. And then Velasco from Dallas to Boca Juniors looks like it's going to happen. Tom Bogert, if you looked at his feed, he ever since we talked to him on Friday morning, he was pretty much nonstop reporting events throughout the weekend.
Yeah, it was a busy time for Tom. After he got done with us, he rushed away to go break the Robin Fraser to TFC news, new head coach for them. He then subsequently broke the Chicho Arango move, and this one is interesting, right? This is Bruce Arena and San Jose taking a risk somewhat, or making trying to turn damaged goods into something that can help them win games. Because Chicho Arango, we know he can score in MLS, or we thought we knew he could score in MLS. He was incredible for the first half of the season for RSL last year, which helped them be in that playoff race near the top of the Western Conference. And then he got suspended, and I'm not sure anybody really knows exactly what's going on with that story or what happened there. And then he stopped scoring. He just could not score anymore. Now, I have looked and have seen a little bit of the analysis, and the underlying numbers are not all that different from first half to second half. So what is it? Did his finishing just drop off a table because he was still getting opportunities? He just wasn't converting them. And I'm sure that's what San Jose is thinking. San Jose is thinking, we've got a player here who basically spoiled his relationship in RSL for whatever reason, and wasn't happy there, but is proven to be a good goal scorer in Major League Soccer. And I don't remember if you have the numbers in front of you on what San Jose is sending RSL, Robert, but they're definitely not spending the $6 million that RSL used to get Chicho Arango back from Mexico and bring him to MLS again, right? So that was a record spend for RSL. So on some level, if you think about it, this is certainly a recognition of failure on RSL's part. Now, Chicho did some good things, but financially, in terms of the budget and the bottom line, it's not great for RSL. $1.4 million in GAM San Jose sends to RSL and an international roster spot. And again, remember that they signed him, RSL did, from Pachuca for $6 million. So that's selling low. That's losing money on your investment in a pretty significant way, and yet it's probably the best thing for all parties.
We'll talk about it probably later on in the week, but a number of American youths and players from MLS youth programs and national team setup did go overseas over the weekend, or was reported. One last note: what do you think of? There's also rumor that former Atlanta United and Montreal Impact, or if they're not called Impact anymore, Football de Montreal, they might get Martinez might
Joseph
be going.
Martinez.
Joseph Martinez might be going out there. So maybe a little bit more of an entertainment factor on the West Coast there in San Jose, trying to get in on the action of the LA dominance that has been.
I just
prominent.
think this is just Bruce doing what Bruce does, which
He's got gravity. He's got a gravity that hasn't been there, right?
Well, I mean, Joseph Martinez is not the player he was in Atlanta, and I know he had a decent run and did some things and made it difficult on Atlanta in the playoffs last year. But he's not a top-level MLS goal scorer anymore. What he is a spot starter and a guy who can give you minutes, and if you get 5 or 6 goals out of him, you'll call that a success in 2025. And again, they acquired Chicho Arango. So San Jose is bringing – Arango is going to be the lead guy. They're spending significant GAM on him, whatever he cost RSL. San Jose is spending significant GAM on him to bring him in. But they are buying low on Chicho Arango because of how bad he was in the second half of the season last year. Joseph Martinez is their insurance policy or their veteran presence to back up Chicho Arango. I don't imagine that they'll play together. I don't think that'll work very well. So you've got Bruce just kind of putting together pieces, scrapyard kind of things, pieces that are, devalued for whatever reason in Arango's case. He's already grabbed a couple of guys from his time in New England. Bruce is putting together a very Bruce team, in the fact these are MLS veterans, none of whom are superstars, none of them who are going to cost a premium for San Jose. San Jose's not making $10 million bids to buy anybody. That's not going to happen. So how do you compete if you're San Jose in Major League Soccer? You do what Bruce is doing, which is to gather these pieces that are, above average players in most cases. Even if none of them are world beaters, you hope that comes together, gives you a chance to make the playoffs and do something when you get there.
Yeah, raising the standard a bit at San Jose. We'll see how that turns out. Long ball number 2 here for Monday. Overseas, the FA Cup had their third round. The big players in the game some of them took on the lower leagues. Probably the highlight of the weekend, Plymouth got a win over Premier League side Brentford. But most eyes were on Spurs getting pushed all the way to extra time against 5th-tier Tamworth. And that was just an entertaining game. The stadium that they played in was a fun little, quintessential standard for a lower league team. And in the olden days, when there was replays, Tamworth would have done enough to then go to London and play in that giant Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But
look,
they end up falling in. They had some chances to win it, but Spurs ended up scoring in late and extra time.
We cannot be hypocrites and say there are too many games and players are being asked to do too much, et cetera, and then say, bring back replays.
Well, in this instance, I understand, you can't have it both ways, but in this instance, Tamworth had done enough. In the 120 years of this competition, they had done enough to maximize the opportunity in the third round of the FA Cup.
Right. I mean, again, the times have changed. Things are different. I mean, I'm saying I would love the romance.
Scrap League Cup and give FA Cup replays. I
would love the romance of Tamworth going to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to take them on. That would be incredible. And again, let's in a perfect world that happens. It's disappointing that Tamworth was not able to find a way to get a goal in that game and make it even tougher. But I enjoyed watching some of it. I mean, the little stands, the local ads, Snow Dome in the background, which I've looked it up, is what it sounds like. It's an indoor skiing facility. So if you're in Tamworth, you can go take the family for some fun at Snow Dome. You've got I think it was Turpin's Bar and Grill was getting a lot of screen time. So shout out to them getting their their money's worth on advertising in that Tamworth Stadium. It was the camera angles, there's the vibes of it all was pretty incredible. And I give Tamworth credit. At points, I didn't get the chance to watch the whole game, Robert, but at points, it wasn't like they were just putting 10 men behind the ball, sitting there waiting for Tottenham to break them down. They were pressing. They were pushing up the field. You said there were some chances. There were some opportunities that Tamworth, these are semi-pro guys. They're part-timers, right? Plumbers are taking on, who'd you say got turned around?
Star.
Star got turned around?
Yeah, there was like I think you call it the pirouetting turn, the roulette move. It was a 32-year-old. I don't know if it was just a social media post calling him a plumber, but a 32-year-old center back doing a spin turn to get around a Premier League player and then lay it off around another Spurs defender was pretty fun. And yeah, they had a header go just wide, a kind of a toe poke finish, get saved by the goalkeeper, the Spurs goalkeeper at the end, and then unfortunately, what broke Tamworth was an unfortunate own goal, and it kind of went out of control from there.
Yeah, it was surreal on some level to watch Dragic bring the ball up on this. Is that artificial? Was it an artificial surface?
I didn't hear the commentator specifically state it, but it definitely looked like it looked like a new surface too. It didn't look worn out or messed up or anything.
No, it looked nice, but it definitely looked artificial. But here it is from the Guardian. I mentioned that Tamworth is one of those teams, and this is the romance of the FA Cup that's got a bunch of part timers. So you had the goalkeeper for Tamworth is a building supervisor. Building surveyor. He's a surveyor. Okay, makes sense. Dan Creaney, a builder and bricklayer. Tom McGlinchey, a PhD student and lecturer at Nottingham Trent University. Nathan Chikuna, a provider of after-school clubs and part-time rapper.
Part-time rapper?
That's what it says. I mean,
ooh, that's fun.
We're gonna have to check in on Nathan Chikuna. We're gonna check in on his
He's
list.
Probably got a SoundCloud or something.
He's got bars. Does he got bars for Tamworth? That'd be great. I mean, again, the fact that that Spurs were celebrating finding a way to win this game in extra time with Dejan Kulusevski scoring a goal to put it away, that is surreal. Give Tamworth a lot of credit. They weren't supposed to be able to do that, and they did. And I know that there was a lot of attention on the Arsenal United game, which United ultimately won on penalty kicks.
Mm-hmm.
This round I would rather see Tamworth and Spurs 1,000 times over in this round than Arsenal United. I just don't like that.
Yeah, beyond like today when the talking heads are reviewing that game, no one will probably remember that for very long, but people will probably always remember that Tamworth versus Spurs game. The people that were there, the fans, anyone in the area. I mean, I watched on TV. I mean, there's a game like Chelsea versus Bradford City about a decade ago that still comes to mind from time to time. So these are the matchups that are special. One of the upsets of the round, Plymouth beating Brentford. Plymouth fans lost their minds about that, but the fourth round draw came out, and Plymouth might have their biggest opportunity to have a giant killing as they drew Liverpool in the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, call me when the fourth round happens, and then I'll look up and I'll check the FA Cup's fixture list and go, oh, okay, great. I'm going to watch some of these games. That's where I'm at with this at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it stuck out compared to these other ones, but Liverpool beating Accrington Stanley 4-0. There were some fun goals. I really enjoyed Trent Alexander-Arnold's wonder strike. He struck it from about 20 yards, and it didn't spin whatsoever. It was just a straight knuckler, and then Chiesa scored his first Liverpool goal. So fun moment there. Moving on to long ball number 3 here on Monday morning. The MLS teams reported for 2025 preseason camp already. Jason, can you believe it? That, we've been talking transfers and rumors and whatnot, but players actually showed up to facilities, but there were a couple absentees, most notably Lucha Acosta not showing up to his camp.
Yeah, this I think this has been bubbling for a bit. That Lucho Acosta not incredibly happy with his situation at Cincinnati. I mean, he's done so much for this team, and I'm never really so I grew up in an era of American sports, watching the NFL and baseball, and any time a player didn't show up for camp, and they called it a holdout, right? Like, he's that player's holding out.
Oh yeah.
I think because I was so keenly interested in my team's success, if one of my team's players held out, I hated that guy. How dare that guy? How dare you not show up for camp and hurt the team? This could be a Super Bowl year. This could be a World Series year. What are you doing? Little bit different attitude now as an adult.
You're more labor friendly.
Yeah, I think that's where you kind of recognize and yeah, it's easy. I mean, it's a little bit different in MLS, right?
Yeah, this is where the business model kind of comes in conflict with how the world works, right?
Yeah, well, yes, and I guess what I was going to say is when we talk about the NFL or Major League Baseball, the NBA, we are talking about the top players in the world in their sports. Like, there's no question the best football players on the planet play in the NFL because really nobody else does it. There's no question the best baseball players in the world play in Major League Baseball, et cetera, et cetera. So when those players hold out and they're already making $20 million a year, you're like, whoa, wait a second. Why do you need more? Like, you got enough already. The rest of us don't have $20 million. Why are you holding out? And in Major League Soccer, it's like it's obviously different. Those players are not the best players in the world, generally speaking, and they're not getting paid like the best players in the world. So, Kellen or Luciano Acosta, rather, is making good money, and he's making way more money than most of us, but it's not as though he's making $20, $25, $30 million a year. So, how much kind of grace do you give him to hold out or to make his point when it comes to his salary and what he thinks he's worth? And obviously this is part of it too, right? Those players who are holding out or do hold out in other big American sports, even if they're making a lot of money, they're holding out because they don't think they're being paid relative to their actual value. They think the club or the team is not paying them as much as they are worth. And I think that is where Lucho Acosta obviously is, right? He is a guy that I think has had bigger ambitions than Major League Soccer. Remember, once upon a time, there was a move to PSG on the table.
Yeah, I was just going to say he was PSG Connect, right?
Yeah, he was at DC United. PSG was going through an injury crisis. I think Neymar had gone down or something, and there was this deal that was about to come together for Lucho Acosta to go to PSG, and it fell apart. I don't remember exactly why it fell apart. But it fell apart. I think it was maybe not the best handling of things from the DC United side of the equation. Obviously, he went to Mexico. I think he did okay, but not great. He came back to Cincinnati or came back to MLS and came to Cincinnati, and it helped turn them into one of the best teams in the league after being so bad. Remember that they started life in MLS as one of the worst teams in the league.
They've come a long way, in fairness, yeah.
Yeah. So what is the balance here, right? And what is it that he wants, right? This is Pat Noonan on Media Day for MLS, which just happened. He said, "We're continuing to support Lucho. I know after the game there was disappointment around the loss. This is last year in the playoffs, and maybe on his end, but we're looking forward to having him back at the facility in the next couple days." Which as look, what is the head coach of the team going to say? Like,
we lost.
Damn it, Lucho, get here right now! How dare you? He's not going to do that publicly. That's not the right approach. It's nominally bad for FC Cincinnati, but I don't necessarily think it's the kind of thing that's going to ruin their season, unless they just mishandle it, unless it just truly is an unfixable situation for Lucho Acosta.
And then one more notable camp absentee, Sebastian Driussi, no-showing the Austin FC as he is pushing for a move to River Plate, but that deal is not finalized, so he's now moving into the territory where he might get some disciplinary measures put against him by the league and the club.
Well, I mean, this is kind of normal too, right? When there's a potential transfer, the players like that I want to force this through, or I want to go. Why am I going to show up for with a team I don't want to play for? There's always some level of potential injury, whether every time you step on a field. And I imagine that if you're Sebastian Driussi in this situation, you're thinking, why would I put myself in any jeopardy at all of getting hurt and undercutting the possibility of a move? I think Estudiantes of Argentina has also been mentioned as involved in a potential move for Driussi. I think Tom Bogert reported that, said they're working on personal terms. But, of course, it all comes down to what Austin is going to get for Driussi. And they just spent a lot of money to bring Brandon Vasquez in from Monterrey as their lead striker. So, and it feels as though the Driussi period is definitely over. So this is sooner rather than later, and it's definitely going to happen. It's just, I think, a matter of figuring out those final numbers. And I think we'll be tracking this because what is Driussi worth? I mean, he had one very good season in Austin, a couple of kind of not so great seasons. I think obviously Austin maybe was a bit of a mirage when they overperformed in that first season. Because
funny how that keeps happening to these expansion teams. They have those first season bumps. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. And then they obviously fired Josh Wolf, so it's a new direction for the club. And Driussi probably isn't a part of that. And that also means, and this is the problem for Austin, that their leverage is seriously damaged. I think everybody kind of is aware that Driussi doesn't really fit what they're doing and is probably out the door. But if he doesn't show up, and now Austin is like, well, now we have a problem child on our hands, and he's ruining our leverage, it only makes it tougher to sell him for a good price to whether it's the Estudiantes or River Plate, whoever.
We shall see how this pans out. Just got to say, just reviewing all this news and notes, it's MLS, a far cry from when they used to be with interacting with the world and all of these kind of giving some meat on the bone for transfer conversations. So that's good. That's our long balls here for Monday. Please like and subscribe to the Morning Kick Around channel. About less than a dozen to go to that first big goal of 500 subscribers. That would be good. Morning Kickaround on youtube.com and Kickaround on social media, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Follow along. Give us a follow on there. That helps us grow beyond just word of mouth as well. And write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We're going to catch our breath and come right back with the culture war of culture wars here on Morning Kickaround. Oh, the culture war of all culture wars. After 7 years of litigation, the trial has finally arrived. NASL has its day in court versus United States Soccer Federation and MLS in their antitrust lawsuit, seeking $500 million in damages. I honestly can't believe it's actually here, but yeah, the court trial that might see the likes of Don Garber and other high-profile officials in American soccer go on the stand kicks off today, Jason.
Yeah, this is, like you said, it's been a long time coming. We were trying to dive into a timeline on this. I pulled up a couple of things. 2017, I believe, is when the actual suit was filed. 2017. That is long enough ago that I was not yet married to my wife at the time.
my children weren't in school,
and I just celebrated my 6th anniversary. So there you go, right? Like my child, who I think of as so central to my life, was not even a thought in my head. Had not even conceived of the idea of conceiving a child with my wife, and here we are, just starting the trial. Obviously, this means the legal system is just, that's how it works, right? Filing and filing after filing after filing, and you got to deal with a judge who has to go through. Well, this, they're making this claim and that claim, and do you toss it out because of this, or does you reject that? And everybody's trying to get to a place of resolving this. There may have been a point. Right. And I remember covering this from the beginning. There may have been a point where U.S. Soccer and MLS, who was pulled into this lawsuit by NASL, could have settled with Rocco Commisso, the main force behind this, the owner of the New York Cosmos, the guy who took over the Cosmos towards the end of the NASL 2.0 period, and believed that U.S. Soccer and MLS were conspiring to hold back the competition that could be presented by NASL. There was a moment maybe when they could have settled with Rocco, but that ship sailed. And Rocco doesn't need the money. Rocco doesn't need the money. You know,
Imagine how much he spent in 7 years of legal bills. I mean, my goodness.
Especially because they have Jeffrey Kessler as their lead attorney on this case, and he has a big name in sports litigation, right? This is a guy who has been involved in a number of cases. He may have been involved in Frazier versus MLS if you go back and look, which is the original lawsuit challenging single entity for Major League Soccer. Just to kind of sketch this out and give a remedial description of what we've got here, Robert, this all comes down to, as I said, this is an antitrust case. This is a restraint of trade case. This is NASL and Rocco Commisso making the argument that U.S. Soccer put in place policies, or had in place policies, that did not allow the NASL to properly compete in the market in soccer, in professional soccer in the United States of America. Right? It comes down to professional league standards and the requirements that U.S. Soccer has in place in order to count as a first division soccer league or a second division soccer league, or whatever division level we are talking about here. I'm curious what you know about this case and what you make of it still, like the fact that we're just now at a trial. And I guess we're going to have to ask some legal professionals and experts what the potential fallout from this trial might be.
Well, the NASL is seeking about $500 million in damages. But yeah, like your point, I reviewed this. There's a really good Forbes article, and I know you noted another article with the timeline, and we should put a link in the description of the show or something like that. But it really all boils down to granting waivers for division sanctioning, and how MLS had received waivers almost unilaterally, blanket waivers, when they requested them, and NASL was not. And a big date on the timeline was last June of 2024, when a pretrial hearing, they noted that there was significant evidence that USSF and MLS had, worked in collaboration with NASL on the outside. So there's 4 main evidence points that led to this trial. One being MLS was always granted waivers to meet the D1 status, so they never 100% met those professional league standards to be a Division 1 league. And then 2, USSF application of standards changed when NASL became a potential competitor. They added in 2009, when NASL 2.0 started, they all of a sudden invented a standards board. And then in 2015, when NASL applied to be a D1, they raised the standards, and then they didn't grant them in 2017, which was the death knell, didn't grant them the second division standards either. The third point was the Sports United marketing. Remember that? It's not there anymore, maybe because of this trial. It was ruled as evidence that some bundling the Major League Soccer and the national team rights together was anti-competitive, because it gave Major League Soccer an advantage that NASL couldn't possibly have if they weren't bundled with the national team stuff as well. And in the fourth point, there's evidence that MLS had meaningful control of the USSF board.
Yes. And again, like, some of this may feel wrong, right? Some of it is sort of just like, if you're a soccer fan or just a rational human being, you go, well, that doesn't sound right. Yeah. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Whether it rises to, conspiracy and restraint of trade and will lead to a win for NASL is a very different question. And again, there's a lot of sort of legal stuff in here that is tough for us as civilians to parse and try to determine how much it's going to impact whether or not NASL can win this. Remember, NASL just named a new commissioner, so I think they're trying to line up some things to make a case that they're going to play again. I think they shut down in 2018 because of basically a judge in this case said that the professional league standards still applied, and that if NASL didn't meet, because they asked for the waiver, they wanted to remain a Division II league, that was repealed or that was denied. Their request to remain a Division II league, that was denied. The court did not force U.S. Soccer to continue to grant them that Division II status, which meant they shut down. Right? They didn't have the U.S. Soccer backing to continue as a league, and because they haven't played, I think this all kind of feels like I don't know. It doesn't feel real in the sense that it doesn't feel like it's going to have major impacts on anything, but I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I think a lot of this comes back to the issue of, and I'm being very remedial here, very simple in terms of my understanding, because I don't understand a lot of the law stuff that has been filed and injunctions and all that. But in the sense that U.S. Soccer's power stems from the act that set up Olympic sport governing bodies, right? This is there is I'm trying to remember the name of the act. It's going to be, I think it's the Stevens Act. Is that that's the one, right? The Stevens Act created this kind of setup where you would have a gymnastics organization who would run American gymnastics. You would have a skating organization that would run American skating, right? These, and obviously lots of these have been in the news for various bad reasons in the recent past, right? Yeah. And obviously when you have a small number of people who are in power over an entire sport, or sort of how it's governed in a given country, that can create a lot of problems. Power is a corrupter, by its very nature, regardless of whether these people mean bad things in the beginning or not. The Ted Stevens Act, by the way, is what I'm talking about. I think there is a legitimate question as to whether or not soccer can be organized under this Ted Stevens Act, because while it is an Olympic sport, it sort of has this much bigger profile, much bigger possibility. So it is worth questioning whether U.S. Soccer, by the laws of our land, should be able to govern soccer in America the way that they do. Now, the obvious problem with that is that if you don't have an organization like U.S. Soccer in charge, like if you don't have somebody making decisions like this, well, then it's chaos. It's the Wild West. There's no organizing structure. Therefore, no one's. And so if NASL is saying, hey, you hurt us unfairly, illegally, by not granting us waivers or not allowing us to operate as a league, right? And in a capitalist free market system, we should be able to operate, right? This is what antitrust law is all about, that one business or one company or one organization cannot control and monopolize an entire industry. We don't want that as Americans. But again, the counter catch-22 part of that is if you don't have standards, well, then what do we get? We get NISA, right? We get fly-by-night operations. We get clubs that can't pay their players. We get clubs that are playing in terrible situations. And then every single time that happens, every time a club comes and goes, or a league club comes and goes because of poor governance, a lack of funding, or just charlatans and grifters are involved in soccer, the game suffers in America, right? We do damage to the reputation of soccer. We salt the ground in places where soccer should be growing. And I get frustrated with that, but this is so circular a problem in America. I don't exactly know because you can't argue that if Rocco wins, that's great for American soccer. Like, I just don't buy that argument, Rob. If Rocco wins, if NASL wins, it might be the right decision legally, but it can't be great for American soccer if that happens.
Well, regardless of the outcome, it sounds like some key players and some of the most guarded answerers of questions, like Don Garber and Sunil Gulati, who don't get pressed in public forums very often, will have to, answer these questions. And at the very least, folks who weren't quite sure what this whole sanctioning and this lawsuit was about will get some of that spelled out to them, and they'll have to answer some tough questions regardless. I mean, Kessler, like you said, he's a high-powered attorney. I don't think he's going to take this on. Granted, he's probably billed a lot and probably has made a good amount of money on it, but you wouldn't think that he would take this on if there wasn't some merit, or if he didn't think that there was some value in pursuing this case beyond monetary enrichment. And just a final note from the Forbes article, it says the burden is now on NASL to prove the existence of an agreement between U.S. soccer and MLS, which unreasonably restrain the market for professional soccer in the U.S. And then the reply or the defense that MLS and USSF have gone to throughout this whole process is NASL's demise was the result of its own mismanagement and connection to criminal indictments.
Well, that's traffic and all of that stuff, and we can go back, and that's a lot to revisit and try to explain. Aaron Davidson and the whole thing, and TV rights being sold illegally and all that stuff, or graft and all, payments under the table and all. Okay, what I was going to say though is multiple things can be true at the same time.
Oh yeah,
and this is the story of American soccer. Multiple things can be true at the same time. That in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, we have benefited from MLS.
Yep.
Benefited from single entity. Benefited from the largesse of billionaires and people who were willing to put money into a product they didn't know was ever going to return them value. Right? We can say that Galati did a lot of good things for American soccer and helped grow U.S. soccer because it was nothing in the 90s, in the early 90s and late 80s. It was nothing. There was nobody cared. There was no money. Nothing was happening. And Chuck Blazer's part of this too. As much as we have we hate Chuck Blazer for being corrupt, if Chuck Blazer didn't exist, it's a real question as to whether or not U.S. soccer would have grown the way that it did. Make a bid for the World Cup, do all the things that happened in those early days, in the late 80s and early 90s that allow us to get here. Now,
throw the big butt in there.
The big butt is that these people, because of the power that they wielded, they took advantage of that power. They acted in ways, and Sunil Gulati is absolutely guilty of this, and we 100% know Chuck Blazer is, and you can throw a number of names into this mix as well, and I'll let you have your pick, that those people made choices that benefited them or their organization that hurt the grand picture of soccer, at least according to certain people's view of what soccer is supposed to be. Right? Again, a game of the people, access, not closing off the leagues, not making it difficult to compete, like all those things. Right? Those things, in a perfect world, we would have a different setup. But it's worth questioning whether we would have ever even gotten to a place to be able to ask those questions and imagine that world if not for some pretty shady people doing some pretty shady things.
We shall see what the ramifications of this are. I mean, when you get large sums that are being pursued, like, do they negotiate it down? Like, if this is agreed to be antitrust with U.S. Soccer and MLS, like, do they negotiate down that $200 million? But you said that, they've already had their chance to settle, so maybe they'll pursue that full thing. That question I want to ask, is there any possibility within this that either USSF has some sort of a punishment where they have to recuse themselves, or the leaders that are implicated here have to recuse themselves from?
What is the, hold on, so there could be a monetary award here. And by the way, remember, just as a point of reference for how sometimes these things go, remember that the USFL sued NFL over a monopoly, right? Sued over basically along the same sort of legal lines. Do you remember what the award was for the USFL? $1. $1. They got the benefit of knowing they were legally right, but they basically got nothing out of the deal. And I don't know. I'm not a legal expert enough to know if that's going to happen in this situation, but it could very well end up being that the NASL wins on the merits of their case, which has been narrowed from their original filing, the original complaint. They could win and still nothing would fundamentally change. Nothing would be different. If you are a person who thinks we need to burn it all down because it's all rotten to the core and it's all terrible and we don't have pro-rel or whatever it is, if that's your belief, then you want the NASL to win and you want it to mean problems, an end perhaps to the leadership of U.S. soccer. But what does that world look like if U.S. soccer is no longer in charge of governing professional soccer in America? What does that look like? And is it better? And I don't have the answer to that. I can't, that's a difficult future to imagine. But some people want it, Robert. Some people want it.
We shall see. But just day one of NASL versus MLS and USSF. starts today. We shall see what happens. It's expected to take well over a week. We'll try to follow it along as the trial pushes forward. The culture war of old culture wars here on Morning Kickaround. And if you enjoy this segment, give us a subscribe. We are just a few subscribers away from the first goal of 500 subscribers. So be sure to click that subscribe button. Follow along on social media at mkickaround, or write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. 2 segments down, 1 more to go. We're going to take a quick sip of our coffee and come right back with today's big question here on Morning Kickaround. Monday morning's big question. Teams in Major League Soccer are checking in for their 2025 preseason camps and preparations. So there was a lot of media day activities happening for each club. In Chicago, former national team manager Greg Berhalter took some questions and made some statements. The man with 3 Gs, Mr. Greg Berhalter, is the Chicago Fire head coach in 2025.
Nope, that's not a thing. I don't believe you. That's not a thing. Nope.
Okay, I know we talked rumors and fake news in the first segment, but I didn't think that's where we were going here. The big question is Greg Berhalter gaslighting Fire and American, or actually more the American fan base, or is he right to say his tenure was the most successful in program history?
So that's what we're talking about here. Let's look at this quote from Greg Berhalter about his time as head coach of the U.S. men's national team. I think the time, if you look at the 6 years with the national team, was one of the most successful periods that the U.S. national team has ever had. So for me, it was a job well done with one failure point. Copa America, and that happens. That happens to any manager across the world. But overall, we took a very young group and we created an identity, and we were successful with that group, won multiple titles in our region, performed well at the World Cup, qualified for the World Cup, so there were a lot of boxes that were checked. Now, I want to go maybe a little bit directly into his achievements to see how this, whether or not this statement is backed up by reality, but just your perception of it, Rob. At the end of this statement, he says, we were successful with the group. We won multiple titles in our region. That's undeniable. Performed well at the World Cup. That's the one that's going to stick out for everybody. Performed well at the World Cup. Rob, did the U.S. men's national team under Greg Berhalter in Qatar perform well at the World Cup, yes or no?
That's a toughie. That's hard to say yes or no. Somewhere in the middle, but slightly more yes. Slightly more yes.
You tick your little meter towards... Yes.
An uncomfortable yes, because I wasn't, my hairline is going higher, but it wasn't completely blown all the way back by the fantastic swashbuckling performance. Like, there were some high notes, but there was definitely places where I feel like most American fans wish they did better.
Okay. So this is a sport. You and I and everybody watching and everybody listening and everybody that cares about this recognizes that this is a sport of gray areas.
Oh, yeah.
This
hard
is
to be absolutely anything.
You watch a game, you say, oh, what a great game or a great performance. That player was the best player on the field. I watch the same game and I go, well, that player wasn't very good and that was a terrible performance and I can't believe they won the game. And neither of us are 100% right or 100% wrong. The only thing that matters in a sense of whether you are, you can talk about absolutes. The only things that you can talk about in terms of absolutes in this game is winners and losers. Right? The result of the game, who won, who lost, and in the case of a World Cup, who continued on in the tournament and who went home. And while I am sympathetic to the idea that Greg Berhalter did some nice things with the U.S. men's national team and helped them progress, and I am sympathetic to a difficult qualification process that involved a lot of young players who had never been through that before, et cetera, et cetera. Himself had never coached in international qualification soccer. He hadn't been down to Panama and Honduras and El Salvador and he hadn't Mexico. He hadn't done any of that before. He was learning. There was a curve. As sympathetic as I am to the idea that Berhalter did some nice things with the World Cup, when we talk about the performance in Qatar, and he says we performed well at the World Cup, I see barely getting out of the group and losing in the first knockout round. That's what I see. And you can say, well, the Dutch are really good, and Louis van Gaal has a great soccer mind, and they have better players in every. But if you are going to say this, if you're Greg Berhalter and you're going to say this so far after the fact, performed well at the World Cup, you are leaning into gray area. You're depending on gray area to make you right. And I don't like it. I don't like it. It rubs me the wrong way because you didn't do the thing we all wanted you to do. And I suppose you could argue the expectations were too high, but you took the job and you wanted to achieve things, right? And you said you were going to make an effort to go. It wasn't, the goal at the World Cup was not to get out of the group and lose in the first round. At least it shouldn't have been. And if it was, that's a defeatist mentality, and I don't like that either. So are you saying, oh, it's okay because that's as far as I thought we were going to get? What the hell what are you doing this job for if you don't want to win every game you play? And I know Greg Berhalter does want to win every game he plays. I think he does. I just don't like this. I don't know if that it's gaslighting, but it is certainly a little bit of leaning into subjectivity. And I don't know that you can live there if you're a Berhalter at this point.
Yeah, maybe not gaslighting, but rewriting history with a very positive, sparkly brush. Because you kind of painted it well. Like there were some upsides, some downsides. Would you say that there's a lot more fans of soccer in America because of their performance that they had in Qatar?
No.
No, I wouldn't say so. Like, and there was a couple like one step forward, one step back. Like they could have had a win against Wales, but they, had the silly penalty and they tied that game. And so, and then so they had to push themselves too hard in that third group stage game just to get out of the group. Yeah. So they flirted with absolute, like, I put lukewarm leaning, yes, but they were very close to a very black and white no there.
The margins are small. Right. This is why I talk about if you're going to talk about things like that, you have to talk in absolutes. And the only place we can talk about absolutes is winning and losing. And in the case of the group stage, drawing, obviously. Right. Because you can't, if you're going to say, well, we played well, but we lost. Nobody cares. Who cares if you played well, if you lost the games? I'm not in a place now as an American soccer fan where I care that the rest of the world thinks we did okay. I don't want to be patted on the head anymore as a fan, Robert, as an American soccer supporter. I don't want this to be, well, you did a good job, Yank. You didn't make it very far, but you played some nice football. No, screw you. I want to win the game. And Greg, did you win the game? Did you beat the Dutch? Did you mishandle your team so that you were gassed when you went into that round of 16 matchup against the Dutch? And you had Tyler Adams unable to cover the ground and stop those Dutch attacks that led to the goals that Memphis Depay scored. Like, why are we not? Greg Berhalter, I understand. He's got an ego. He's taken on a new job. He's probably still hurting from what happened with the U.S. men's national team. But don't tell me that you performed well at the World Cup when everybody can see how that played out, right? It's not that they were a disaster. It's not that they were an absolute failure. And that's a lot of gray area too. But don't say we performed well when for me the word well should be winning knockout round soccer matches.
You hit your goals if you hit your goals at a very modest level for success. It's like I can, get a good grade on 60% of my assignments at school doesn't necessarily mean I'm an outstanding student, right?
Look, if my kid comes home and says, "Dad, I got a 75." Oh, that's a C. Okay.
He was 100% correct on 75% of his answers.
Would I say then, "Oh, you performed well this semester"? Hell no, I'm not going to say you performed well. I'm going to say you did okay. It was mediocre at best, and I don't know. Can I expect a human being when answering this question to say, well, I thought my time was okay, or we had some mediocre performances, and we were pretty mediocre at the World Cup. C'est la vie. Like, I don't know that I can expect that, especially when he does at least have some. He's got some room. Just a little bit of room to make the argument that they performed well. And again, a lot of the headlines coming out of that World Cup after the loss to the Dutch were things like, oh, the rest of the world thought the Americans played a very unique, nice brand of soccer or whatever. And this is coach, backing up coach, that mutual admiration society that exists in certain coaching circles. And I think Berhalter, he felt he felt emboldened by that. Like I think he felt built up by that he had done something with the national team that got the attention of some very good European soccer minds. But again, why are we chasing their admiration? Why are we chasing their approval when what we care about is winning matches?
And in that quote from Berhalter, we talked a lot about that first part about the doing well in the World Cup, and then there's like a little bit at the end. Everything was great except for that last bit at the Copa America. That's a big but.
Can we also point? Yes, right. 1 point of failure. I mean, that's a big ass point of failure. It's a pretty significant point of failure as points of failure go, Greg.
And he did not hit his management benchmarks.
I mean, at no point have we mentioned that he completely mishandled. And I understand there are multiple people who came out of this looking terrible, including Gio himself, but he mishandled the Gio Reyna situation. So you can maybe point to things on the field and make some sort of reasonable argument in this gray area that you were kind of okay, that there was growth, that you brought a young team together, that you built a culture, yada, yada, yada. But what you cannot say is that you handled everything well when one of the major stories of your time from the World Cup is how badly things went with Gio Reyna.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. And I just remembered the whole leadership conference where he spilled the beans about that. And that kind of spoke to his attitude of when he said, I thought that was off the record, that almost kind of showed his elitist kind of mentality. He's like, the plebes weren't supposed to hear any of that.
Yeah.
And he just I said it in public, but it was in a forum where normies weren't supposed to be at all. You weren't supposed to hear all that. I was in my leadership world. That doesn't affect the real world.
Man, that part of the Berhalter experience is one of the parts that rankles me the most. That he was so into leadership culture and reading books on leadership and meeting up with people, at lakeside conference centers and talking about how you lead young men and then again leaving Qatar and going directly to New York to participate in some small group leadership conference with, what was it, Chatham House Rules? And Chatham House Rules. Brother, just stop, okay? Just for coach soccer. Just coach soccer. Like, if you want to read about leadership in your spare time, fine, I guess. But maybe don't make it so clear and so obvious to everybody that what you actually care about. And this is, this is why Arne Slot is kind of a breath of fresh air in world football right now, because we spent too long turning managers and coaches into gurus, into life coaches, into great men you're supposed to follow, into generals or something. And even then, generals were basically giving orders. I'd prefer that. Stop it already. Just be a soccer coach. You don't need any of this other stuff. And if you do need it, fine, but don't make it central to your approach so that we have to deal with you speaking jargon every time you get in front of a microphone.
Do you think Pochettino, just a quick yes or no on this, Pochettino life coach guru, yes or no?
I don't know. The man thinks that lemons can absorb negative energy. I'm not sure where that falls on the spectrum of guru-ness. We may have to. I listened to a podcast that actually is called Decoding the Gurus, and it's about all those weirdos on YouTube that have big followings and talk about stuff like. It's not about sports, but maybe we need a soccer version of decoding the coaches.
Decoding the coaches. That could be on soccer's weird segment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although it would have to be beyond American soccer. So there you go.
Well, Chicago Fire, good luck with Greg Berhalter in 2025. We'll see how that tenure, I mean, he obviously did decently well for Columbus Crew. We'll see how that goes. The Triple G experience in Chicago. Had a few comments down below regarding a couple of our segments today. Placata, U.S. soccer can get sanctioned by FIFA if the rulings sides too heavily with NASL. Is that true?
Well, I mean, you obviously everything kind of flows from FIFA, right? FIFA sanctions U.S. soccer, which then is in charge of organizing the national teams and doing a lot of things in soccer in America. And if FIFA decides that something legal, like this is all, FIFA does not love when the law gets involved in soccer. And sometimes they will step in and they will suspend a federation or they'll do some things to kind of prevent that from spiraling And I guess it's possible. I think it's very unlikely, but it's certainly possible that FIFA could say, U.S. Soccer, you've botched this. Now, what would that mean, right? Can we conceive of a world in which the U.S. Soccer Federation loses their sanctioning from FIFA and a new organization has to form and then lobby FIFA to be sanctioned as the organizing body of American soccer? I guess that's possible, sort of an alternative federation. I'm not sure if we necessarily can imagine that would be better than what we have right now, but I suppose it's possible.
But with the people involved, you look at who the power players are. I mean, is Johnny Infantino going to, reverse course and change his inside group? I mean, him and Sunil, and there's a few of those folks, have many interests in common and whatnot. So even if they did get desanctioned, you'd almost think that maybe the same people would be involved in the next iteration anyway.
Could be.
And then Mike Thomas, thank you for tuning in each and every show, Mike. He kind of has a expletive-laden comment. How did the union F up enough to get a registration ban? And that one I don't know. Do you know what he's referring to there?
There's a reason I didn't put that comment on the screen, right? Because I don't have enough information to talk about it. So
we'll return to that. And there's a few other good comments. But one from Placata Berhalter is a singular guru with a following of 0. Ooh, which is its own kind of pathetic. Harsh words from Placata in the comments. Thank you for tuning in and following along once again here on Morning Kickaround. If you haven't already, hit up subscribe button. Let's get to 500. We might just do it today. Social media. At MKickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And then if you want to write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. You got anything else for us, Jason?
No. Well, yes. Okay. Teaser to come this week. I do believe Dennis Crowley from Kingston Stockade and the League for Clubs is going to join us on Wednesday to help us understand what he's doing. Lower division, lower level American soccer, high amateur game kind of organizing, trying to find. I mean, again, this ties directly into everything we've been talking about today with the lawsuit and the organization of soccer and how who gets to decide and how is this good for leagues or clubs and whose businesses are behind in any of these things. So I'm interested to talk to Dennis, who has always been very active in sort of how we organize soccer, particularly some of these smaller clubs in places like Kingston, New York, or all across the country. So I'm looking forward to that on Wednesday.
Yep, looking forward to that too. Pam@53, thank you for the compliment. Says he really enjoyed our show. I appreciate the positive input. And I think that does it for our show. Your morning has been thoroughly kicked. And until Wednesday, everybody, please enjoy your soccer. This was Morning Kickaround.